up here giving an update on our pastor. And this morning, it is my pleasure to give you a live update and let him speak for his own self. Pastor, we're so wonderful, just pleased to have you back. I'll start. How about that? It's been a long road. It's been 5 months. I was telling my son last night that Pastor was going to be back, and he said, "It's only been 5 months. It feels like it's been so much longer." But you have been in our hearts, our prayers, and obviously it's a miracle, but we're so glad, so thankful for you and for your family. And we'd just love to hear a little bit about what you've been going through. I've got some questions if you need me to ask you some questions, but and then anybody here that has a specific question would be glad to help take one of those as well. So.
Yeah, I'm going to actually let Jackie start. She's going to say a quick word of thanks here, and then I'll share some other things. She's going to help me out just to save my voice a little bit.
Well, I'll try to talk. I told Mike I'm just going to ugly cry the whole time, so I apologize. I should have worn a mask or something so you don't have to see this. But there just are not adequate words to describe how thankful and humbled we have been, our entire family has been, by the outpouring of prayers and support from our church family. You all are our family, and we're so thankful. From the time 5 months ago when he first went into the hospital for what we thought was going to be 3 days of IV treatment, you all have lifted us up and just picked us up and carried us through up until now. The darkest times when we just weren't sure what was going to happen, until much happier times now. We still feel your support. And what I mean by that is you guys took so much off of our plate. You took worries and responsibilities and duties and everything just off of our plate so that the kids and I could focus on Mike. And that's what we needed to do. And we'll forever be grateful to you all for that opportunity. Many of you know that my mom stayed with us. She got here last week of March, and she actually stayed through the first week of May. She flew back home to Missouri just a couple days before Mike came home from the hospital. One day she was outside when our mailman was making deliveries, and they started chatting. And I think curiosity just had gotten the best of our mailman, and he was like, "My goodness, somebody must be having like the biggest birthday celebration ever," or whatever, because he was just commenting on the amount of cards and things that we were getting daily in the mail. Of course, my mom explained to him what the situation was, that Mike was in the hospital, and she was like, "Those cards are all from his church members, Well, he was blown away by that, and he said, well, 2 things. Your family is very loved, and that congregation is very, very special. And we wholeheartedly agree. We feel incredibly loved, and you all are very, very special to us. So we thank you, and we just ask that you continue to pray for him and his recovery. And, we're so thankful that we're on this side of it. Thank you. We love you all dearly, dearly. I'm done.
No, I just want to, I guess I'll just kind of dive right into it. I'm sure the obvious question is just kind of how am I doing? Really mentally, I guess I'll just kind of mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Mentally, I'm doing fantastic. It really is a miracle. My blood oxygen was so low at times that there's medical people in here that can explain it better than I can. But the fact that mentally I really wasn't affected, at least no one has told me yet that I'm affected. So I'm going to take that as a positive sign. But I'm just extremely thankful to the Lord When I kind of finally started to get a little bit more of my wits about myself, I started reciting the books of the Bible, the catechism, hymns, and I was like, boy, I think I'm okay. I think maybe I'll be okay. So mentally, I don't feel like I've missed a beat. Spiritually, again, I just thank the Lord. It's really only strengthened my faith. It's one of those things where, I really just would encourage all of you to continue to be strong in your faith, because when things like this happen in life, you have to be prepared. To a certain degree, it's too late when the time comes. Having the gift of the Word of God in your life, when these things come, are kind of what pull you through. I know for me, I can't imagine not having Christ in my life through that. It was a lot of lonely days. I think through this, one of the things I really learned is that when it comes to the Christian faith, and even being a pastor, there has to be a genuine witness, a genuine and honest sharing of the faith. I think that's maybe one of the things in the past that the church has lacked, as an honest dialogue. And so I would really just encourage all of you to stay strong in your faith as much as possible, because that is what sustains you spiritually. And I just thank God for all of you through the years, because the people minister to the pastor as much as the pastor ministers to the people. Physically, it's kind of always something that's been kind of touch and go. As she knows, there's been good days and bad days. It's never really been a straight upward trajectory. It's kind of like, a good day, a bad day, but the overall journey has been one of continued progress. I still have a lot of issues to deal with. Just the length of the hospitalization, the nature of the treatment, the medications. It takes a toll on the body. But I think, a lot of it I've been able to resolve, naturally with the doctors, but I still have a few things. My stamina's not kind of where I need it to be long term, but that's getting stronger. I need to thank the kids, especially Brody. Every day that I woke up, Brody goes out and walks with me for a long time. He's kind of been my walking partner, so I appreciate that. I'm getting stronger and stronger. My lung capacity is still pretty low. Last time that I was up at UAB with my pulmonologist, it was about like at 50%, but I think it's gotten a lot stronger in the last month. 2-3 weeks ago, I would have never been able to talk like this. I would have been very breathy, so that's a huge improvement. It's really no one's, really it's a best guess, I should say, as to how my lungs will react long term. If you saw my x-rays and everything, it was pretty bad. It was just like a white sheet over both of my lungs. When I first came to and rehab started, I tried to take a walk around the ER, and I had never done anything that hard before in my life. Honestly, when I got back to my room, I said, Lord, just take me home. I'm done. I'm not going to be able to do this. So I made tremendous strides with that. So that's physically. I already talked about spiritually. Emotionally, I think you can kind of see that I'm emotional. I've never been a very emotional person. She knows that. I think you probably can know that too, being your pastor for over a decade. they say that even just being on the heart-lung machine, things like that, can make someone a little bit more emotional. I'm a little bit more emotional than I used to be. That'll probably change, I guess. I probably go back to being the mean old dad again. But I just am extremely thankful for every day that the Lord gives me. It's certainly has given me a new profound understanding about the gift of life, family, church. One of the reasons why we're doing this is not only to give you an update, but I think even for myself, just a chance to kind of get it all out. Because one of the things I want more than anything is for the church to get back to normal. I don't want to hold the church back. I want the gospel and Christ to be the focus again, and not my health, but you. And I know that's what it's been with Pastor Helmers and the lay leadership, but I don't want this to be the topic of conversation. While I tell generic stories and sermons about, our family life as illustrations, I've never really been very comfortable talking about myself. And I kind of prefer to keep it that way, I apologize here. I'm going to have to kind of clean myself up here a little bit, but I'll let Jackie talk a little bit about, I think if you just want to share a little bit about that Facebook post and things.
Oh, yeah. Mike was never a big social media guy before this happened. But when he came home in May, he was, if you can believe it, he was already starting to get a little stir crazy. Like, I need to be back. I need to be doing stuff. Well, like I said, he wasn't big on social media before, but he did start a Facebook page, just, if you want to follow him, I guess it's Mike Allmeyer, but he's been sharing just different devotionals each day, mostly each day, about just kind of his experience in ICU and other topics, that are very relatable to life, but he's got about 30 different devotionals on there. So feel free to look that up if you're interested. He'll continue doing that. I think it's been a very good outlet for him. Because he has missed this, and he's missed, his passion, which is preaching and teaching, and so that was just a small way that he could kind of ease back into it and put his thoughts, not only to paper, but kind of circulate them out there a little bit. So look that up if you're interested. I think you'll continue doing it, maybe? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to, then we can open it up to questions, but just kind of what my return will look like. I'll be honest with you, I'm probably coming back a little too early. Someone maybe say way too early, but I have to come back and start doing something. Like she said, I can't sit at home anymore. I'm going crazy, just even emotionally. So the doctor is my speech therapist. I go to a speech therapist just right down the road here in Homewood. It's actually, she's right in Alabama Neurology, if you know where that building is, kind of down by the Piggly Wiggly or whatever that is in Homewood. And she gave me the okay to come back. I'm surprised she's not here somewhere, making sure I'm not talking too much. But I'm going to start coming into the office starting tomorrow, coming for a couple hours a day. I'm going to be here but not be here. I will be here in the sense that I will physically be in the building, but I guess I'm not really here in the sense that I'm just going to kind of work on my own, doing some office things, putting together the worship folders and, planning worship services and getting the confirmation year ready and, things of that nature. If you need to get a hold of me, my speech therapist and the doctors, they just want you to email me or text me, and I'm just supposed to try to save my voice as much as I can. When I talk like this, I'm fine. If I start kind of going above that, it's a little iffy. My voice has made tremendous progress, really just even in the last week or two. I think I kind of went in a next step. So I feel terrible about that, again, like I said, because I don't want to be holding anything back. And I know you're kind enough to say that you're not, but I still feel that way. I think that's just kind of a natural, normal thing. So, and then I will preach. I'll probably preach much like how I'm sitting here. It'll be a different style for a while, and then hopefully I just kind of progress and build on that. It'll be more of like a Franklin Delano Roosevelt fireside chat, I guess, is maybe what the sermon will be. It might be a little shorter, but I don't think anybody will complain about that. Peyton always tells me about 8 minutes is good enough. So, yeah. So I don't think you'll mind that. I'll just have to make sure my words count a little bit more. But the elders and Pastor Helmers will continue to help with the liturgy, and we'll just kind of build from there. And then hopefully by September build a little bit more in October. And I just really don't know, quite honestly, how things will go. I haven't really known how any of this was going to go since day one. It's really just kind of a day-by-day thing. Some days you wake up and you're like, wow, this is really progressing. Other days you wake up and you're like, God, this is going backwards. Thankfully, there's been more good than bad, way more good than bad. But just kind of taking that as it goes. So I don't know. Is there anything else on that? So I don't know if you want to open up to questions, or I don't even know if anybody has questions. I think you said you put a few together.
The same way I was the first time Pastor and I talked afterwards is obviously his voice is different, but what I found, what several of us have found, is it's still Pastor. And quite frankly, after a while, hopefully before you guys leave today, you'll think, okay, well, I'm used to it. I know the family's used to it because this is what they hear. So we need to remember that and be thankful for that, because I think several, Jackie mentioned his Facebook post, and several of those, he's talked about his voice not being the audible voice, but the words that are coming out of him, whether it's in print or through audio, and I think that's what's important. So I know, because he had talked to me for several years about not being a social media person, but this has been fantastic. This has been what I would say would be a great mission for this church, because I know all of you have shared his updates, we've shared his prayers, and it has spread around the country. So I'm grateful that he's taken that initiative to keep doing that. I know one question, Pastor, I'll have that's maybe a little bit more relaxing. We've always heard you've been very kind to share about your personal side of eating, and after being in the hospital for so long and losing so much weight, what was the first meal you wanted?
Actually, the first thing that I had, and it was the best thing that I ever tasted in my life, it was ice chips. When I finally came to, and I had to pass a swallow test naturally before I could eat food, worrying about, aspirating, and my lungs were already, tanked. So that was the last thing that any of us wanted to have happen. And I remember they gave me an ice chip, and I thought I wasn't sure if I was alive and here on earth or dead in heaven, and because it was that good. After being on a ventilator and the trach and all that for so long, that was great. Eventually, though, it was Chick-fil-A. That was Chick-fil-A, Jimmy John's, and I think that those were the two big ones at first. They would grab and bring into the hospital. So that's probably it. Yeah, it's great. My 11 years ago, my driver's license, my weight on my driver's license, I finally matched the weight on my driver's license again. There was about 7-8 years of lies there, so and I have a bunch of old clothes that fit again. No, I lost 50 to 60 pounds, and I think I've put on, about 20, 30 of that back. Probably shouldn't put on any more. But that probably won't work, but we'll see how long it lasts at least.
You had mentioned that your mental state, your cognitive state, obviously hasn't been affected. Anything with physical? You'd mentioned your stamina, but anything that you've noticed that we should be aware of?
No, again, my lung capacity, like I said, when I had those, tests up at UAB, was about 40-50% lung capacity, but I think that's getting better. I would guess right now maybe like 60% maybe. When I talk, I have to kind of pause a little bit more than I used to. I probably talk too fast anyway, so maybe again that'll be a good thing. A lot of the issues that I've had have resolved or are resolving. I had tremendous neuropathy when I came to. I had no feeling in my feet, no feeling in my thighs. I still really don't have much feeling in my thighs. A lot of that is and the thighs are from the cannulas of the ECMO machine. They're basically like hoses that go through. And that affected the nerves there. That's coming back. I had no feeling really in my hands, in my arms. 90% of that has probably come back, and I think most of it will. I kind of feel like it will. The doctors feel like a lot of it will. I had a lot of problems with my hand shaking when I came out of it in ICU. I really had to learn, kind of like I told some of you, I really had to learn how to do everything from scratch. Holding a pencil, holding a spoon, climbing the stairs, writing, typing, all of that were things that, I was just kind of learning how to do all over again, dressing myself. So you might be thinking what I've been doing for the last few months, really just kind of learning how to do everything over again. I remember when I got in the car to drive for the first time, felt like a new driver again. A lot of those things have resolved themselves. For a while, I was losing all my hair. I think it's actually growing back out again. But it really just, whether it's COVID, whether it's just the hospitalization, lack of nutrition, stress, it's all those things. It just affects the body in a lot of different ways. So I don't really know if there's anything you need to be aware of. My voice, so I'm just trying to limit as much in-person, one-on-one conversations possible to try to get myself back to whatever my new normal will be as soon as possible. I don't know if I ever will get my voice back 100% to normal, but it might get there. I feel like it's kind of on a good trajectory. I just have to kind of be very smart about how I use it, at least for a little while. That's a really good question. There's a lot of it that I don't really remember at all. I think that's I've had a lot of people tell me that. My speech therapist, she worked for 10 years helping patients get off of a ventilator and a trach. And she said that she thinks it's she's a real strong Roman Catholic. She calls me, as a Lutheran pastor, she always says I'm Catholic light. So she says that she thinks it's kind of one of God's gifts of grace that he kind of just wipes it out of your memory. So a lot of it, to be honest with you, I don't really remember. I do remember snippets. I would explain it this way. You know, normally our memories can kind of put a video together of things we remember in the past, continuous events. I don't really remember video. I remember more snapshots, just distinct moments of time that I draw back. So it's more of like a still photo versus continuous time. It's pretty hazy, but I do remember things. Sometimes, honestly, the more that time passes, I remember a little bit more and more. But yeah, that's probably the best way that I can answer it. I think I probably said a lot of things that I don't remember. I hope none of it was bad. The doctors and nurses and therapists probably put up with a lot of stuff that people say that, quite honestly, they don't know what they're saying. I think you wanted to say something.
That was something that we really wondered too when he first came home. He would ask us a lot of questions about the timeline. And there are entire lengthy conversations that we had with him in the hospital. And he's like, I don't remember any of that. And that just blew my mind away. Like he said, I don't know if it's coming back to him more and more. I think he had mentioned on one of his posts, there would be a lot of times where he would call or text at, middle of the night, 1 a.m, 2 a.m, like regularly. And I'm like, Mike, I love you, but you've got to go to bed and you need to let me sleep because I'll be there in like 5 hours, And he's like, the clock in his room was on military time. And so I think that just really messed with him, So it said like 1:30. Well, it was 1:30 in the morning and he didn't really have a window to see out. But that's just kind of a fascinating thing through all of this, how he remembers very small things, like when UAB first called us and said that he had been responding to the nurses. That was April 3rd. It was on Brody's birthday, and so we were blown away because they had just transferred him to UAB the night before from Grandview, and things were not looking good. And so when the UAB nurses called and said, yeah, he's responding to us, Brody and I drove there because they would allow 2 at a time. And that was the first time that we saw him kind of open his eyes, and he smiled and was squeezing our hands and stuff. I think he remembers that a little bit. But then he started having a lot of trauma with his tracheostomy site, and they kind of had to up his medication a bit, so he lost a lot. He lost a lot of time there, and even a lot of time in therapy that they could have been doing with you. And so just little snippets. But even just another example, when they told us that we were at kind of the point where they had to intubate him, that was in the afternoon, and the doctor gave him the option, we can go ahead and do this now, or we can wait until tomorrow. It's up to you. We just want to do it before it becomes like an emergency type situation. And we talked about it, and he said, well, let's just do it, tomorrow morning. Let's kind of give ourselves the night. And so we all came in. Mike's parents brought the kids in, and, he had a very emotional evening in the hospital room, shared a lot of devotions and hymns, and like he was saying, the Bible verses just that were coming to memory. He doesn't remember any of that even, and that was like before he was intubated. But it's strange what the body does, I think, to kind of shield you from the trauma and the pain that you're going through. And I do think that's a big blessing that maybe you don't remember all of it. But, those are things that will stick with us forever and will mean a lot to us, and maybe it will come back someday. But I think it's a good thing to kind of be shielded from it. So really the first thing that he remembers in the hospital is when they allowed him to eat food again. He's like, yeah, from that point on, I remember everything. So that was just like, that's what it took to kind of snap him out of it and bring him back. So thankful for those ice chips, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one of the struggles with my voice too, is that she brought to mind, with my trach side, I just had a tremendous amount of uncontrollable bleeding. And so it really did a number on that, I think more so even than normal. They just could not control the bleeding with my trach. I could tell some stories, but they'd probably be a little bit too gross. The coughing and the bleeding were so bad that, just to give you an idea, Jackie said she was standing at the end of the bed, and the blood would come out with such force from the trach site that would actually go all the way across the bed and actually land on her. And I was so uncomfortable that, I would would be turning, right, left, up, down. So it did a lot. It did a number on that. So much, the trach really sits below your vocal cord. So, technically it's not supposed to be that bad for your vocal cords, but my speech therapist said it still does a number on it. Also, the intubation, the tube. If you just rubbed your finger like this, for a couple minutes, it wouldn't do anything. But if you did it for weeks and weeks, after a while, it would be the pebble in the shoe that would just gnaw and just tear it up. And so that's what's caused a lot of the issues with it. And your body involuntarily has a lot of movement in there, even if you're not talking, and just with the intubation. So it's just that constant rubbing, friction. It really does a lot to the vocal cords. So actually my voice is maybe more of a product of the intubation than actually the trach, although none of it really helps. None of it is a good thing for your voice. I don't know if you have if you have a question or others.
It's more of a statement than a question, but I understand completely you're not going to be the focus of the church, but at least from my point of view, as long as I've been here, Christ has always been at the center of this church. And I think when a good leader steps away, it keeps going, and many thanks to, of course, Pastor Gomez, but Christ has been the focus of this ministry since you've been running.
No, and I just want to echo that. I just want to say, we just have so many words of thanks. The problem is we can't say them all, and there's so many things that people did that we're not even aware of. It's hard to thank them. So we just want to say a tremendous word of thanks, and also again to Pastor Helmers and into the lay leadership, and just all of you as well. So yeah, it's absolutely true.
Lori.
I wanted to expand on that because it's a great testimony, and I think I would all feel that you are very much the church here. And your leadership is very much appreciated. I just wanted to know, I don't know if I missed it, do the doctors feel your lungs are 100% recovered, or is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I don't think anybody can answer that. For 99.9% of folks, this isn't even really a concern. It's getting a car accident, airplane crashes. Live life, live your life. It's a gift from God. Don't be afraid. But because this is so new, there's just so much that the doctors don't know. Dr. Gongora is my cardiologist, and Dr. Willie at UAB is my pulmonologist. And it's kind of interesting because when you talk to the doctors, a lot of times the doctors want to talk to you more than the doctor's talking to you, because they are learning. And so they're always kind of like, well, what are you feeling? And, she can attest to this. When I talked to Dr. Willie at UAB, he was willing to listen to me go on and on and ramble about everything, because I had all these questions and things going on. And he listened to us for how long? Like, it was a couple hours. Yeah, we shut down Kirkland Clinic. By the time we left, there's nobody there. And he was just, he was so kind. But two, I think they're just trying to get a feel for it. It's kind of like a live in-person live research for them. And so, honestly, just nobody really knows. I'll go back in a couple months for a scan, and that'll tell, obviously, if there's a lot of scarring on the lungs. He didn't feel like at this point, in his opinion, that much would change in a month or two, and really just said, hey, we need to give this like 6 months, see how the body reacts, and then we'll know more by that. And everybody's just so different that it's just really hard to know. I am optimistic about it because I feel like I continue to make progress. If you've ever used one of those spirometers in the hospital, the inhalation spirometer, when I first started, I think I was like at about, 0, but then it went up to about like 500 and then 1,000 and 2,000, and now I'm able to get it up to about 3,000, and 3 to 4 is about a pretty normal range. My ability to inhale is okay. My ability to exhale is really weak, and that's what I'm really kind of working at. When you can breathe normal, you never think about breathing. You just do it. So you kind of think like, well, how do you even think about this? I never thought about it. But there is a little bit more thinking about it for me now. Trying to use my diaphragm a little bit more. One of the blessings, hopefully, is that there's a lot of your lungs, I guess, that I've been told that you don't use. We don't ever really fully use the capacity of our lungs. So hopefully I can just kind of tap into using a little bit more of my lung capacity than I did before to make up maybe for what I lost. So yeah, that's about the best I can answer that.
Well, I'll just say, go ahead, Dick.
Pastor, Jackie mentioned that you set up a personal Facebook page.
Yes.
I was wondering, what's the handle on your, what's the name?
It's just Mike Allmeyer, and I'll try to, and we'll try to work on just making some hard copies of them and maybe just printing them out, and you can go ahead and if you're interested, take a look at them that way. If you were kind of like me, and I still am not, somebody's a big social media person.
We're working, several of us are working to see if we can even get this linked up to the church website, just because it's public, so you don't even have to really follow him. You can, and I will tell you, that's what has been, to me, the reason why I said that it's been a mission is there are people that are posting comments. I know many of you follow him every single day, but there are people posting comments that don't live anywhere near us, and I think it's just fantastic. But I will say, most of you probably know this, but I am a big-time planner, and the hardest thing for me to do is not plan. But Pastor, we just want you to know that we don't need a plan. We are ready to, we've been 18 months adapting to not knowing what the next week is going to be. And I know the church, I speak for the church when I say that we're ready to do whatever we need to do. We're just thankful for you to be here in any shape or form. Toby.
After as you are planning to come back to the church office and progress, is there anything more we can do to help you?
Quite honestly, I haven't really given that too much thought. So maybe down the road there will be some things. I at this time I don't see too much of that. I appreciate you asking. It's very kind. Hopefully, I just kind of get stronger and stronger and better, and so it's long term. It's not really even. It's not even really an issue or really even a concern. But as of right now, no. I mean, hopefully, just a good microphone, and from there, hopefully, we kind of go from there. I don't know, does anybody else have any other questions or?
Yeah, I had one question. You know, a lot of times when we have family and friends that are sick or ill or going through tough times, we always say, I'm going to pray for you. And what that means to everybody is different. But I've learned over the years that it's easy to say, I'll pray for you. I think it's harder to ask, what prayers can we say, or what prayers do you need from us? And obviously during this time, the prayers are pretty easy, what was needed for the Allmeyer family. But I would ask now, where you sit today, and certainly it's such a blessing, what prayers can we expand upon you as you move forward?
Yeah, those are all good questions, and that's another good question. I think out of all this, you know, naturally the pastor, it's always been there, but I think, you know, obviously, you know, life experience is a different school teacher. You know, you either learn in a classroom or you learn through experience, or sometimes, you know, we just never learn the lesson, unfortunately. But I think this life experience has probably just taught me more that the church, I think, needs to continue to just grow in its urgency of the gospel. You know, it's just easy in life to put that in the background for family, for friends. I think what I would appreciate the most is just that the church has a greater understanding of the urgency of the cross and what that means in our lives. Because when you are in the situation that I was in, and again, I apologize for being emotional, but, you know, quite honestly, I had many moments where I never thought I would be back here again with you in this setting. You know, and so now to be here in a place where, quite honestly, I thought, you know, I would never be. You know, I think that that's the thing that I pray for and want the most for people, because not that we don't enjoy, you know, the gifts that God has given to us, because that's what he wants us to do. But at the same time, as we enjoy those gifts, to understand that, you know, that there just needs to be a greater urgency for the gospel. Because it's so easy, and I know that I certainly plead guilty of that it's so easy to get apathetic. Not that we're terrible, well, we are poor, miserable sinners, but you know what I'm saying. Not that we're terrible people, or that we don't really love the church or love Christ or love the gospel, but it's just so easy to get distracted by the things of this world. And, you know, we talk about it a lot, but when you really are in that situation, you do realize, you know, that truly is the gift. It just was something that's, you know, inescapable for me. Many of you have lived through that because you've had loved ones who have passed. And so for me, you know, there were many moments, you know, I remember some of it, I don't, but, you know, there was a moment when we were at Grandview Hospital where, you know, they had pretty much informed us that, you know, that I didn't qualify for ECMO. And that was pretty much, you know, in a certain sense, a death sentence. You know, pretty much of just saying that, you know, there was, you know, nothing they could do. And so I had many moments like that. I even had moments where just physically, I truly did feel like I don't know if I really am going to pull through this. And so in those moments, you know, obviously the Lord works, the Holy Spirit works. And I think that's really just my biggest prayer. And I think we see that in our world today, that, there are just so many other things that are getting in the way. I know I won't follow this. It's easy to talk it, but it's just so easy to let other things distract and become a wedge or a concern in your relationships, in your marriage, with your children, at work. I would just encourage you, for as little or as much of it is worth it, just to not let those things be a worry or a concern to you, because in the end they really just don't matter. They just don't matter much. I've told myself that a million times, but over the last few months, we still argue about stupid stuff, so it's going to happen. You can't stop it. But at least if you can diminish it a little bit, it's for the better. I don't know if there's any other questions or.
Alma.
I was just going back to the Facebook thing, it's been wonderful to read Houses and Motions every day. But I think if he could get on Jackie's page and on his own, it might be more accessible to somebody, especially if people are not very technical.
Yeah.
You just don't provide it all my end.
Yeah, we're looking at all different. I know Todd and I have talked, Pastor Helmers and I have talked. We've all talked about ways that we can get that out, because it is inspiring. And I will tell you, most of you were either here or watched it, but the prayer service that Pastor Helmers did, the hardest thing for us to have done was what Pastor Helmers said: be still and know that I'm Lord. One of the first posts that Pastor made said, be still and know that I'm Lord. And I would say that's probably the hardest thing for us to do. But when you ask about prayers, we've been doing it, and I don't see us stopping. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
The Cubs have been on life support. Do you have a plan as you move forward, what you're going to do about our Chicago Cubs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Someone here at church, who I won't name, but sitting in the front row here, they were kind enough to get me a subscription to the MLB Major League Baseball Network. So I've been watching my fair share of games, and no, there's no hope for that. So there's hope for other things, but there's no hope for that right now, at least probably for a decade. It might be.
Well, Pastor, I know I speak for everybody when I say it's just such a wonderful blessing to put eyes on you again, to hear your voice, and to see you here in the Lord's house. We are very thankful for that. And I cannot reiterate, Todd and I both have talked about this. If we start and stop, that's fine. We need to do whatever is best for you. And we are, again, as I'd said before, we have become as flexible as they get. So we're willing to continue to be flexible, as whatever you need for your health and your family's health.
No, and I appreciate that. And if there's no other, I don't know, does anybody else have any other questions? I don't want to shut it down too quick, but any other questions? Or now I was just going to kind of say something closing. Did you have a question? Are you just moving your arm? Well, I was just going to say in closing, yeah, I just want to just encourage everybody just to continue to live your lives out in joy and happiness. Live your life out in the fullest. And it's not only this, there's just so many other things that in this life, because of the fallen nature of creation, that we, it's easy to live your lives out in fear of things. I just encourage you not to do that. Live your life out in joy and the freedom of the gospel. you know, no matter what comes your way, you know, I might return fully to normal. Quite honestly, you know, my body went through a lot. It's, you know, when your body goes through that, it's maybe even unrealistic to think that you're just going to kind of come out of it unscathed. And so I doubt if that will be the case. I wouldn't be surprised if there was, you know, issues in the future. You know, there was a lot of things that my body went through. And so no matter what, I just would encourage you just to, you know, I told the kids this as a family and Jackie, and, you know, I'd say that to you, the same, to live your life out with that joy no matter, you know, no matter what comes your way in life. And again, I apologize for being emotional. Like I said, I think this is just kind of a cleansing time for me. I don't want to be crying during a sermon. That's one of the things too that few of the nurses and even one of the doctors up at UAB, they were joking with me, and they said they use some colorful language. I won't use that, but they said, "Boy, you're going to be able to tell some really great stories and in sermons." And I really, quite honestly, I really prefer just not to talk about it. You know, I just want to preach the text. I just want to preach what Christ has to say. I don't really plan on talking about it much, if ever, in sermons. That's one of the reasons I know, you know, people reached out and said they were interested in hearing about it. So, and I understand that. That's certainly fair. And so I thought the avenue of just putting some of it on social media might be a good alternative to that. But no, so when I come back Sunday, I apologize here again. When I come back Sunday, I just kind of would like to come back as business as usual. And, you know, if it's St. Paul talking about something boring like ceremonially unclean food, that's what we're going to talk about, even though this might be a little bit more intriguing or interesting or emotional or whatever. We'll just talk about ceremonially unclean food, and and we'll just stick to that. So, you know, I just like to kind of get back to the mission of the church.
Good. Well, if there is nothing else, I think it would only be fitting for us all to end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.